Vivian Alexander, old money wrapped in Oscar de la Renta in pearls, leaned toward India with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. So, India, Marcus tells us you two met at a bookstore? The Poetry Foundation. I was attending a reading of Lucille Clifton's work. How quaint. Vivian's laugh tinkled like breaking glass. I didn't realize people still did that in the age of audiobooks and podcasts. Polite laughter rippled around the table. India took a sip of water, unbothered. Marcus Reid's penthouse overlooked the Chicago skyline like a throne room, surveying its kingdom, but the man himself sat on his leather couch looking decidedly unroyal. His hands trembled slightly as he held his phone, staring at the text from his mother for the 5th time that hour. Bring her to the garden party. It's time we met this woman properly. India Morrison emerged from his bedroom wearing one of his old Howard University t-shirts and reading glasses, her natural hair piled into a messy bun. At 32, she moved through the world with the quiet confidence of someone who knew exactly who she was, which made her terrifying to people like Patricia Reid, who spent their entire life performing identity like a Broadway show. Your mother texted again, India said. India settled beside him, tucking her legs underneath her body. I saw. You've been staring at it for 20 minutes. She wants to meet you. Officially. By officially, you mean she wants to inspect me like a prize mare at auction. India's voice held no bitterness, just a weary recognition of someone who'd heard this song before. Marcus said, My family, they have standards. The Reid estate sprawled across 5 acres of Chicago's Gold Coast like a monument to everything black excellence was supposed to look like. Manicured lawns that whispered money with every blade of grass, white tents that could house small villages, ice sculptures of African masks that cost more than most people's cars, and enough designer fabric to clothe a small nation. India arrived in Marcus's Tesla, wearing a simple cream sundress from Target and flat sandals. Her natural hair fell in loose curls around her shoulders. No silk press, no weave, no concession to the politics of respectability that governed spaces like this. Small gold hoops from her grandmother completed the look. She looked beautiful. She looked comfortable. She looked nothing like what Patricia Reid expected. That's when the games began. Patricia Reid stood at the entrance of the garden like Cerberus guarding the gates of heaven, her cream Chanel suit pressed within an inch of its life, her hair sculpted into submission, her smile sharp enough to draw blood. At 63, she'd spent 4 decades building the Reid family into Chicago's premier black dynasty, her husband's surgical practice, her daughter's medical career, her eldest son's political rise. They were featured in Ebony. They hosted fundraisers for the NAACP. They were important. And Marcus, her baby boy, her brilliant tech entrepreneur, had brought this to her garden party. Marcus, darling. Patricia's voice could freeze champagne. And this must be India. India extended her hand with the easy grace of someone who'd shaken hands with both janitors and CEOs and treated them exactly the same. Mrs. Reid, your garden is stunning. Those hydrangeas especially. They're thriving in this heat. That's difficult to achieve. Patricia's handshake was brief, her eyes scanning India's outfit, like a customs agent searching for contraband. The pause stretched just long enough to be uncomfortable. Yes, well, I have a team for that. Another pause, waited with unspoken judgment. Marcus mentioned you work in finance? Investment consulting. How practical. The word landed like a slap wrapped in silk. And where did you attend school? India had played this game before. The questions were never really questions. They were tests, obstacles, chances to prove you belonged or confirm you didn't. Howard, then Wharton for my MBA. Wharton? Patricia's eyebrows lifted a calculated millimeter. Well, that's something. Something not impressive, not accomplished. Something. Marcus's jaw tightened, but India squeezed his hand gently. A warning. A promise. Not yet. We should find our seats for lunch, Marcus said, his voice tight. As they walked through the garden, India cataloged the guests with the same analytical precision she used to evaluate startups. She saw James Coleman, CEO of Coleman Tech, whose Series B funding she'd personally structured. She saw Mariah Johnson, whose restaurant empire India had helped expand to 5 cities. She saw at least a dozen other entrepreneurs whose success had her fingerprints all over it. None of them recognized her. That's how she preferred it. Power, real power, didn't need a spotlight. The tent was a masterpiece of tasteful excess. White linens, gold-rimmed china, centerpieces that probably cost more than India's monthly rent. She sat at the family table between Marcus and his sister Nicole, a surgeon whose perfectionism extended from the operating room to her immaculately styled locks and St. John knit suit. Across from her sat David Reid, the Illinois state senator, who carried himself with the careful authority of someone who knew cameras were always watching. His wife, Simone, wore enough diamonds to fund a small school. Vivian Alexander, old money wrapped in Oscar de la Renta in pearls, leaned toward India with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. So, India, Marcus tells us you two met at a bookstore? The Poetry Foundation. I was attending a reading of Lucille Clifton's work. How quaint. Vivian's laugh tinkled like breaking glass. I didn't realize people still did that in the age of audiobooks and podcasts. Polite laughter rippled around the table. India took a sip of water, unbothered. Nicole jumped in, her surgeon's precision applied to social vivisection. Investment consulting must be interesting work. Do you work for a firm we'd know? Goldman? Morgan Stanley? I prefer to keep a low profile. David set down his fork with the deliberate care of someone making a point. In this family, we believe in visibility. Representation matters. Our success should be seen, should inspire the next generation. We don't hide our light under a bushel. He gestured around the garden, a showcase of Black achievement and wealth, carefully curated for maximum impact and Instagram engagement. India met his eyes steadily. I absolutely agree that representation matters, Senator. But I found that real power, the kind that changes systems rather than just occupies them, often works best in the shadows. Visible success is important. Sustainable transformation requires different tools. The table fell silent. David's eyes narrowed slightly. Patricia, overhearing from the adjacent table, looked like she'd just bitten into a lemon. India, dear, Patricia called out, her voice carrying across the tent. We're taking photos for the Tribune's Society section. Perhaps you'd like to freshen up first? There's a powder room in the main house. I'm sure we could find something more suitable for you to wear. The implication hung in the air like smoke. India's simple sundress, her natural hair, her flat sandals, none of it fit the aesthetic of Reid family perfection. Every eye at the table turned to India. Marcus started to stand, his face flushed with anger, but India placed a gentle hand on his arm. I'm comfortable as I am, Mrs. Reid. Thank you for the thought. Patricia's smile could have cut diamonds. Of course. How authentic of you. The word authentic sounded like an insult in her mouth. As afternoon bled into evening, the garden party transformed. The string quartet gave way to a jazz trio. Champagne flowed. Guests networked with the aggressive politeness of people who turned every social interaction into a transaction. India stood near the reflecting pool, observing performance with the detached interest of an anthropologist studying a foreign culture. She'd been to dozens of events like this. Different cities, different families, same game. Watch how people move. Note who defers to whom. Identify the real power versus a performed power. That's when James Coleman spotted her. His eyes widened in recognition, then carefully smoothed into neutrality. He approached with 2 champagne flutes, his $7,000 suit fitting him like armor. India Morrison. His voice was low, careful. I didn't expect to see you here. James. How's the expansion going? Thanks to you. Ahead of schedule. We're opening in 3 new markets next quarter. That Series B funding saved us. He paused, then added quietly, You saved us. When everyone else said no. Patricia Reid, who had the hearing of a surveillance drone when it came to her garden parties, materialized beside them with Vivian and Nicole in tow. I'm sorry, do you two know each other? James opened his mouth to answer, but India cut him off smoothly. James and I have done some business together. Nothing worth discussing at a garden party. But Patricia smelled blood in the water. Her pride, wounded by India's refusal to perform, demanded satisfaction. I think we'd all be fascinated to hear about your work, India. After all, You've been so modest about it all day." The word modest dripped with condescension. Guests began to drift toward them, sensing drama the way sharks sense blood. David abandoned his conversation with a city councilman. Nicole set down her champagne. Simone pulled out her phone, Instagram reflexes kicking in. Marcus stepped forward, his voice tight. "Mother, this isn't." "It's fine, Marcus." India turned to face Patricia and the assembled guests with the same quiet confidence she'd maintained all day. The confidence of someone who knew exactly what card she was about to play. "I'm the founder and managing partner of Morrison Ventures. We specialize in early-stage investments in Black-led startups that traditional venture capital overlooks or undervalues." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. James Coleman nodded confirmation, his CEO persona sliding into place. Morrison Ventures invested $20 million in Coleman Tech when every other firm said we were too risky, too niche, too black. James's voice carried across the garden. "India personally mentored me through our pivot. She introduced us to customers. She opened doors that were slammed in our faces. We're now valued at $300 million. David's political instincts kicked in. Morrison Ventures? The Morrison Ventures? The firm that's been quietly reshaping the tech investment landscape for the past 8 years. That's the one." India's voice remained calm, conversational, as if she were discussing the weather rather than detonating a bomb in the middle of Patricia Reid's perfect garden party. "Over the past 8 years, we've invested in 73 companies across tech, biotech, consumer goods, and real estate. 42 are still operating and profitable. 12 have been acquired by larger firms. 3 have gone public. Our portfolio is currently worth approximately $2 billion, with a 23% annual return rate, about 3 times the industry average." The garden fell silent except for the jazz trio, who continued playing, oblivious to the social earthquake happening around them. Nicole's champagne glass paused halfway to her lips. Vivian's mouth actually fell open. David looked like someone had just handed him a political problem he couldn't spin his way out of. Patricia stood frozen, her Chanel armor suddenly looking more like a costume than power. $2 billion. Vivian's voice was faint. "But you're so young. And you're a woman," India supplied helpfully. "Black? Wearing a Target dress?" "Yes, all of those things." Someone in the crowd, one of the younger entrepreneurs, let out a nervous laugh that died quickly. India continued, her voice never rising, never hardening, just stating facts with the precision of someone used to presenting to boardrooms full of skeptics. "I started Morrison Ventures when I was 24 with $300,000 I made flipping distressed properties during the 2008 recession. I identified a gap in the market. Brilliant black founders with revolutionary ideas who couldn't get funding because they didn't fit the pattern recognition of predominantly white, predominantly male venture capitalists. I filled that gap." She turned to face Patricia directly. "I learned early, Mrs. Reid, that wealth is quieter and more powerful when it doesn't announce itself at garden parties. Real power doesn't need designer labels or society page features. It builds. It transforms. It opens doors that were previously locked." The pointed comment landed like a cruise missile. Patricia's face cycled through shock, disbelief, embarrassment, and something that might have been fury or might have been shame. Marcus stepped beside India, his voice carrying across the silent garden. "This is who I tried to tell you about, Mother, but you were too busy judging her dress to listen, too focused on whether she fit your aesthetic to ask about her actual accomplishments." "Marcus." Patricia's voice cracked slightly. "No." Marcus's anger, contained all day, finally erupted, not in volume but in intensity. "You invited India here to inspect her, like she was applying for membership to your club. You dismissed her because she didn't perform wealth the way you expected, because she refused to play the game." He looked around at the assembled guests, at his family, at the monument to respectability politics that surrounded them. "But while you were all performing success for society pages and Instagram, India was actually building it. She's funded the dreams of people our community overlooks. She's created generational wealth for families who would never get a meeting with traditional VCs. She's changed lives." Patricia looked at India with new eyes. seeing her for the first time not as an interloper, but as someone who'd been playing an entirely different game all along. Patricia's voice was quiet, stripped of its earlier authority. I apologize, India. I was wrong about you. India tilted her head slightly, studying the older woman with something that might have been pity or might have been understanding. You weren't wrong about me, Mrs. Reid. You just decided who I was before you knew me. You saw the sundress and the natural hair and made assumptions based on your rules, your standards, your performance of what success should look like. She took Marcus's hand. But here's what I've learned building Morrison Ventures. The most revolutionary thing we can do is refuse to perform for people who've already decided we're not enough. The second most revolutionary thing is to build power so undeniable that their judgment becomes irrelevant. India smiled, not cruelly, but with the weary wisdom of someone who'd fought this battle in 100 different gardens with 100 different Patricias. Thank you for the invitation, Mrs. Reid. Your hydrangeas really were beautiful. She and Marcus walked toward the exit, their departure creating a wake of silence that felt louder than any argument. Behind them, Patricia Reid stood among the ruins of her perfect party, holding a champagne flute that suddenly felt very fragile in her hands. That's when she dropped it. The cafe was everything the Reid estate wasn't. Small, modest, filled with mismatched furniture and the smell of fresh coffee and old books. No ice sculptures, no designer fabric, no performances, just truth. India and Marcus sat in their corner booth, the one where they'd first talked for 6 hours after that Lucille Clifton reading, discovering each other beyond the noise of expectations and social performance. I'm sorry, Marcus said quietly. I should have warned you better. Should have stood up sooner. You stood up when it mattered. That's what I needed. My family. Your family will learn or they won't. Either way, I know who you are. That's enough. Marcus lifted her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles gently. More than enough. Outside, Chicago glittered with the same indifference it always had. Unconcerned with garden parties or venture capital portfolios or the small revolutions that happened in cafes when two people chose authenticity over performance. India looked at Marcus and thought about power, the performed kind and the real kind, about wealth that announced itself in wealth that built quietly in the shadows, about love that survived judgment and love that simply existed, needing no validation beyond itself. You know what the funniest part is? She said softly. What? Your mother's entire garden party. The tents, the ice sculptures, the orchestra, the designer everything. Probably cost about $200,000. Marcus waited. I made that much yesterday on a single investment exit, and I was wearing sweatpants. They both laughed. The kind of laughter that comes from surviving something absurd and emerging with your dignity intact. In the window of the cafe, their reflection looked like what they were. Two people who'd found each other in the space between who the world demanded they be and who they actually were. And outside, somewhere in Chicago's Gold Coast, Patricia Reid sat in her empty garden, surrounded by the wreckage of her assumptions, finally beginning to understand the difference between looking powerful and being powerful. It was a lesson that would cost far more than any garden party ever could.